Ethan stared out at the rain beyond the window, his emotions a tangled web. He let out a sigh and muttered to himself, life, huh? It's really hard to figure out. Translated content. I transmigrated into the beautiful ex-wife of an autistic male lead. Even though I talked to him 800 times a day, he still wouldn't give me a second glance. So, I gave up. The system wanted me to win him over, but I just nudged his shoulder and told him to make me a 3-course meal. He was wielding a spatula in the kitchen like a madman, while I chewed on my bubble tea and bossed him around. Next time, get the bubble tea with no ice and a third of the sugar, and add milk foam. Later, the influential Ethan, a big shot in Beijing, was in the middle of a high-level meeting when his phone suddenly rang. Everyone held their breath. The man, rumored to never crack a smile, suddenly hooked his lips into a grin. It's time. Order her a bubble tea. 1. I transmigrated into the beautiful ex-wife of an autistic male lead. At first, I was against it. You see, I've always loved talking. When I go back to my hometown for the new year, I can talk circles around a dozen old ladies. I can post over 10 updates on my WeChat moments every day. My voice messages are always 60 seconds long. I looked at the tightly locked room door, banging on it while wailing. System, look for yourself. Does this make any sense? Ethan and I have been married for 2 years, and he's spent most of that time locked in his room, not talking, just tinkering with his wood. Every day, I stand outside his door, chanting about what happened that day, like how the bubble tea shop skimped on the pearls today, how the 5-point sugar was cloyingly sweet, how Mrs. Zhang next door's cat had 3 kittens, and so on. But I've never heard a single response from inside. I'm talking to the air and potted plants every day. I'm not far from becoming autistic myself. The system suggested I use my beauty. I stood at the door in revealing clothes, whispering, honey. As a result, I don't know if the person inside got hot, but I was burning up. I had a fever for 2 whole nights, and I almost thought I was going to kick the bucket. Ethan felt like his ears suddenly had a moment of peace. Something was wrong. He came out of his room and realized I was about to burn my brains out, so he hurriedly called 911 and sent me to the hospital. But even so, he still wouldn't talk to me. Even though he can speak. Even though he can hear. I got fed up and gave up. Whoever wants to complete the mission can go ahead. 2 o'clock the next afternoon. I woke up from hunger. The moment I opened my eyes, I saw an extremely handsome face and a pair of dark, deep eyes. It was Ethan. I have to say, as the male lead, Ethan is objectively very handsome. His features are very defined. He's 6'2", broad-shouldered, with a V-shaped torso. Standing next to him really highlights our size difference. No wonder, even though he has autism, even though he's just a despised illegitimate son, there are still many women in the circle waiting to squeeze me out and become Mrs. Ethan. I get it, but I can't eat it. So frustrating. I turned over in annoyance, belatedly realizing that I was sleeping naked. I dove under the covers. I shouted, Ethan, what are you doing in my room? Of course, Ethan wouldn't answer me. Blushing, I grabbed my pajamas from under the covers and threw them on haphazardly. I secretly peeked out from under the covers. There was hot water and cold medicine on the bedside table. He's actually quite nice. Even though my marriage to Ethan was arranged by his deceased mother, and we have no romantic feelings for each other, the little bit of our 3-year marriage will come to an end when the female lead appears. No fighting, no drama, just a peaceful divorce. But in these 3 years, Ethan and I have been quite respectful to each other. Ethan's ears were flushed. He coughed lightly, looked away, and tentatively touched my forehead. Then he let out a low sigh of relief. The fever had broken. I rubbed my stomach, looking at him expectantly. Ethan, I'm hungry. Hearing this, he paused, looking at me in disbelief. I held out my hands, looking very innocent. Look at how the kitchen fumes have ruined my hands. If I go into the kitchen a few more times, I'll become an old hag. No way, no way. His brow furrowed even more, and he looked at me even more puzzled. I felt a little guilty. Okay, I admit I've been ordering takeout instead of cooking myself. Ethan opened the takeout app and handed me the phone. I pushed it away. Takeout is bad for you, especially for someone recovering from an illness. It's all lymph node meat, might as well not eat it. Finally, he opened an electronic cookbook. It had some basic dishes, like scrambled eggs with tomatoes, stir-fried green peppers with pork, steamed ribs with rice flour, and so on. My eyes lit up, and I quickly ordered a few, this, and this. I want to eat them all. The system sighed helplessly, Yuri the host with the worst constitution I've ever seen. You can catch a cold just like that. Also, you're just letting him into the kitchen like that? Aren't you afraid he'll poison you or blow up the kitchen? The male lead is autistic right now. Can't you be a little more patient with him? I'm a patient too. Besides, what does autism have to do with cooking? That's just sophistry. That's the truth. System, didn't you say the male lead is very intelligent and can learn anything? Cooking a few dishes is nothing for him. The system panicked. Is that what the male lead's intelligence is for? Why not? Life is just 3 meals a day. Who says daily necessities don't require intelligence? 3. Not long after, Ethan came to knock on my door. As soon as the door opened, I smelled the aroma of food from outside. It had been a long time since I smelled that kind of home cooking. When I was a kid, my parents were busy, and no one cooked for me. I had takeout for every meal. On my 18th birthday, we gathered together for the first time. They asked me what gift I wanted. I said I wanted to eat a home-cooked meal someday. They looked at each other and hesitantly agreed. But the day after I turned 18, they divorced. They had their own futures and careers to pursue, and I was proof of their unwanted past. Neither of them wanted to take me with them. In the end, I never got that meal. Ethan really is talented. The food was so delicious. I devoured 3 big bowls of rice. I ate and cried at the same time. Ethan was stunned. He reached out and wiped a grain of rice from the corner of my mouth. Ethan, you're amazing. Hearing this, Ethan looked up at me, thinking he had misheard. Seeing that I was staring at him intently, he lowered his head abruptly, pretending to be busy picking up his chopsticks, but his ears were burning red. Of course, I was so focused on eating that I didn't notice these details. I reached out and picked up the last piece of braised pork from the plate. Just as I was about to put it in my bowl and eat it with rice, I suddenly realized something. It seemed like Ethan hadn't tasted a single piece. There wasn't much braised pork on the plate to begin with, only 6 pieces in total. I had just eaten 5 pieces, and this was the last one. After thinking it over, I took the chopsticks from Ethan's hand and put the only piece of meat back into his bowl. You eat it, I've had enough. Ethan didn't touch the meat for a long time. I frowned. You're not going to eat it because you think it's been in my bowl and you don't want it, are you? Ethan lowered his eyes and took a bite of the braised pork. The system's roar came from my mind. Host, what are you doing? Didn't I tell you that the male lead never eats braised pork? When he was a child, his pet dog was stewed into meat by the Ethan family, which was used to make braised pork, so he hasn't eaten it since. Host. I'm really impressed. How can someone make such a big mistake? I scratched my hair. I knew from the system that Ethan didn't eat braised pork, but I thought he was just picky. Who knew it was because of this? No wonder his expression was a little strange when I asked him to make braised pork just now. Don't eat it. I took the braised pork out of his bowl. Ethan, I forgot. We won't eat braised pork anymore. Ethan just seems cold, but he's actually just an ordinary person who's been sensitive and insecure since childhood. He didn't say anything. The atmosphere froze again. I picked up a piece of steamed ribs with rice flour. Ethan, how about you take care of all 3 meals from now on? I had never been married before I transmigrated, and I didn't know how a married couple should get along. Although there's only 1 year left of our 3-year marriage, we still see each other every day, so we should live well. No matter what, we're husband and wife now. We have to be responsible for the division of labor in the family. You're responsible for washing vegetables, cooking, washing dishes, washing clothes, mopping the floor. I'll tell you the rest when I remember them. He put down his chopsticks and looked at me with some confusion. His expression was as if he was saying, "Are you serious? I have a thick skin. What are you looking at me for? I have my own division of labor, okay? I have to be responsible for making this family lively. It's tiring for me to say 800 sentences a day, okay? You don't even appreciate how hard I'm working." Ethan suddenly reached out. I subconsciously protected my bowl. What are you doing? Trying to steal my food. He slowly uttered 2 words. Wash dishes. I was stunned. This was the first time I heard him speak. His voice was so nice. I suddenly got excited. You just spoke? Can you say more? Your voice is so nice. It's so much better this way. Talk more, and I won't have to play a one-person show anymore. It's boring to be the only one talking at home. Say a few more words, or should I go get you a microphone? I babbled a lot. In the end, I got 2 words. Not good. Okay, he's willing to speak. He's just only willing to say 2 words at a time. But no matter what, it's better to say 2 words than not to speak at all, otherwise this family would be too lonely. I'm done eating, then I'll trouble my husband to wash the dishes. This was the first time Ethan heard this term. When he took my bowl, his movements were a little unnatural. He pursed his lips, not understanding, but still doing it. I nodded with satisfaction. Ethan still has the potential to be a devoted husband. I crossed my feet and gently kicked his waist. It's awkward when you don't respond. His body stiffened for a moment, and he uttered a word with difficulty, okay. I responded with a smile, my husband is the best. Ethan's face turned red, and he quickly ran to the kitchen with the bowls. 4. Ethan was washing dishes in the kitchen. I was lying on the sofa picking out bubble tea, wavering between cocoa and Haiti, when the doorbell suddenly rang. I got up and went to the door and asked, "Who is it?" I was about to press my ear against the door to hear the movement outside, but the password lock was suddenly opened. A wrinkled old man's face and a delicate middle-aged woman's face appeared in front of me. "Young Master Ethan, Mrs. Ethan is here to see you." The so-called Mrs. Ethan is Jane. She didn't have a son, she only gave Ethan's father a daughter, Wendy. After giving birth to Wendy, her health had been poor. Despite years of conditioning her body, she was still unable to have a son. So, she turned her attention to Ethan. After Ethan's biological mother left, Jane had been intentionally or unintentionally contacting Ethan. Ethan's biological mother was still in love with Ethan's father until her death, but Ethan had always hated his father. He refused to return to the Ethan family and refused to accept any money from Ethan's father. Ethan's father felt guilty about his biological mother. And he was his only son. Therefore, as long as Ethan returned home, he would definitely inherit the Ethan family in the future. Everyone could see this clearly. Outwardly, Jane and Wendy were very concerned about Ethan, the so-called illegitimate son. But in fact, if they hadn't humiliated Ethan in every possible way, Ethan wouldn't have developed autism. At this moment, there was a sudden noise from the kitchen. I hurried over and only saw the bowl in Ethan's hand falling to the ground. He was trembling all over, shouting, "Get out." 5. Of course, Jane wouldn't give up so easily. She stepped forward to comfort him. "Ethan, it's okay if you don't want to call me Mom. I'm here to invite you to your sister's 18th birthday party next week. Your father misses you very much and hopes you can come." Ethan pursed his lips, controlling his trembling body. He had finally been willing to talk to me these past few days. If he was stimulated by Jane like this, what if I had to play a one-person show again? I stood in front of Ethan with a swoosh, using my small body as a human shield. "Get out." I repeated what Ethan said. Jane then slowly looked at me. She sized me up from top to bottom, quite disdainfully. "You're Ethan's wife? I heard you're just an orphan with no parents. You're only with him for his bloodline, aren't you? In that case, you should be advising him even more, not adding fuel to the fire here." I was angry. After holding it in for so long, I finally exploded. "If you can't speak properly, you can shut your mouth. There's no need to spout nonsense, right? Who are you trying to guilt-trip here? He shouldn't be calling you Mom in the first place. What kind of mom are you? And sister, what kind of sister? Does sharing the same bloodline make us family? Then we're all descendants of the Yellow Emperor. Why don't you call me Grandpa? But even if you acknowledge me, I wouldn't acknowledge you as my grandson. Why didn't you say all this when Ethan's father was around? Why say it in front of Ethan? What, learning that two-faced green tea trick from young people? Don't you look at how old you are?" I took a deep breath, held Ethan's hand, and continued to Jane. "Also, I don't know where you got the key to our house, but now, please get out. Otherwise, I'll spit all over your face. Don't blame me. But you should thank me for giving you a face wash so you can see yourself clearly." Jane's face was green and purple, and she couldn't utter a word for a long time. "Well, you did find a wife who knows how to talk back." I waved goodbye to Jane and her driver. Ethan stood in the doorway, not moving for a long time. I flipped my hair in a very cool manner. That was the most satisfying thing I've ever said. "Oh, by the way, are the dishes washed? And do you think cocoa or Haiti is better?" Ethan raised his eyes to look at me, with an indescribable emotion in his eyes. After a moment, he returned to normal. "Not yet, Haiti." "Oh, then I'll drink cocoa." I went back to the sofa and curled up again. "What are you doing again?" "Host, this banquet is where the male lead and female lead meet for the first time. It's the first key point in establishing their emotional foundation. How can you just say you're not going?" I thought about it very simply. But Ethan doesn't want to go. Besides, shouldn't I be asking you? To create a strong, tragic male lead in a female-oriented novel, you have to make him live so frustratingly before he grows up. The system still didn't speak. I couldn't be bothered to pay attention to it. It's just going through a plot point, right? I don't believe he won't meet the female lead if he doesn't go to this banquet. Not long after, Ethan finished washing the dishes and not only cleaned up the broken ceramic shards on the floor, but also wiped the pot, kitchen tiles, and the tabletop clean. He even tied up the kitchen trash bag and placed it at the door. And I finally finished ordering my bubble tea and curled up on the sofa to browse my phone. It wasn't until a slender figure blocked the light in front of me that I slowly looked up. Ethan's eyes were red. Even his lips were trembling. He looked very kissable. No, what am I thinking? Ethan took a few steps forward, with an indescribable stubbornness. Why, help me, talk? Because you don't like her, so I don't like her either. Ethan frowned. In his mind, these simplest reasons were the most impossible reasons. We're husband and wife, aren't we? Shouldn't husband and wife share joy and sorrow and bear the consequences together? Hearing the words, husband and wife, Ethan was stunned. In the past few days, he had heard these two words from me more than once. These two words were gradually beginning to take shape. He pursed his lips, seemingly anxious, but found it difficult to say a complete sentence. Then, why, agree, with me, husband and wife? I stared at his face. Ethan's appearance was on the cool side. When he didn't speak, he looked like an untouchable flower on a high mountain, making people want to pull him down from the altar. But when he was anxious to speak, his originally expressionless face had a few blushes, and the corners of his eyes drooped slightly, which created a desire to protect him. In short, no matter when, he was so handsome that people couldn't take their eyes off him. It's simple, because you're good-looking. As soon as the words fell, the tips of Ethan's ears turned red. After a long time, he said only one word, oh. I laughed. What does oh mean? He said very seriously, I don't know how to reply, but, you said, need reply. I nodded and smiled at him, you're learning fast. He was clearly not used to my praise. Hearing this, he turned around quickly. Then, after leaving a sentence, you, also good-looking, he ran away quickly. 6. In the past few days, Ethan had been saying more and more. This made me very happy. At least I wasn't talking to the air anymore. But he had been calling some unfamiliar people lately. I was a little scared, worried that he would be scammed. Although our savings weren't enough for wealthy people to even notice, it didn't stop people from coveting our credit score. After thinking about it for a long time, I finally brought up this serious question. Can you give me your phone for a second? I want to download. Before I could finish speaking, the phone was already in my palm. Anti-fraud app. After handing me the phone, Ethan went to the kitchen to cook. Ordering takeout didn't make me realize that making 3 meals a day was so time-consuming. Ethan spent most of his time in the kitchen and a small amount of time in his study making calls. Although Ethan was the male lead, it didn't rule out the possibility of him being scammed. After downloading the anti-fraud app, I was still a little worried and asked cautiously, "Can I use your browser and contacts?" Ethan quickly appeared in front of me. "Contacts are okay, but, can you not look at the browser first?" I belatedly realized something. Blushing, I whispered, "Sorry." A faint burnt smell wafted from the kitchen. Ethan quickly ran back. At this moment, the doorbell rang. Someone outside shouted, "Takeout." I wondered, I didn't think I had ordered takeout today. I opened the door and saw a cup of cocoa. Ethan ordered it. Creme brulee crunchy milk fluff, a third of the sugar, no ice. It was exactly my taste. The sound of the kitchen range had stopped. Ethan took off his apron and came out with the stir-fried green peppers and pork. I shook the bubble tea that I had already opened. "You ordered this?" Ethan scooped the rice and placed it on the table, glancing at me. "Yeah." His tone was very natural. "You always order a cup to drink in the afternoon after eating, so I bought it first. Drink it earlier, or you won't be able to sleep at night again." I was a little confused. "Can't sleep? How do you know I can't sleep?" "You didn't sleep either?" "Yeah." "You weren't deliberately listening outside my door, were you?" "This room, soundproofing bad." I broke down. I broke down completely. Not only could Ethan hear my silvery laughter every night, but he also knew what inappropriate videos I watched to help me sleep. No. He knew, so he knew. Why say it out loud? 7. A few days later, in the morning, while Ethan was preparing breakfast for me, the Ethan family sent a set of men's formal wear and a set of women's formal dresses. It was for Wendy's 18th birthday party tonight. A few nights ago, I heard Ethan's father call Ethan and threaten him with his mother's belongings to attend the banquet. These past few days, Ethan's expression had always been a little unnatural when he faced me. He must have been thinking about how to tell me. I said softly, "This dress is quite pretty. I've never worn such an expensive dress before." A flash of light appeared in Ethan's eyes. "You're willing to go?" "Yeah, I'll go with you." It seemed that the plot was returning to the right track. Ethan would meet the female lead here who would stand up for him, they would fall in love and get to know each other, and from then on they would overcome all difficulties together. I should have been happy that the mission was about to end. But I felt a little uncomfortable in my heart. 8. All afternoon, I stayed in my room learning makeup from makeup vloggers. In the blink of an eye, 4 hours had passed, and I had barely managed to create a satisfactory look. It matched the pink dress quite well. Just then, Ethan knocked on my door. "The driver is here." "Coming." I pushed open the door, and the first thing that caught my eye was Ethan's delicate face. His hairstyle had been carefully styled, his features unadorned and naturally handsome. The suit on his body fit perfectly, unexpectedly matching his overall temperament. He had shed his immaturity, leaving behind steadiness and maturity. I was so focused on looking at Ethan's outfit today that I didn't notice that his pupils were also sparkling. The driver also had a smile on his face, they looked so well matched. Let's go. I naturally took his arm. The driver's eyes were full of surprise, and he muttered to himself in confusion, when did their relationship get so good? Didn't they say there was no affection between them? We lived in a relatively remote area. The journey to the banquet hall was about 3 hours. I sat in the back seat, played with my phone for a while, and then felt a little carsick. In short, everything was uncomfortable. Want to eat some fruit? Ethan suddenly took out a Tupperware container from his bag. Inside were chunks of cut cantaloupe and watermelon, as well as washed strawberries. I was very pleasantly surprised. You actually packed fruit in your bag. And snacks. He handed me the bag. I rummaged through the big bag. I even found bubble tea. I was shocked. There's bubble tea too? When did you buy me bubble tea? This place only has on-site ordering, and the line always takes an hour. Did you go out this afternoon to wait in line to buy it for me? No ice, a third of the sugar. It's my taste. Ethan, you're too good to me. When I finished saying the last sentence, his face suddenly turned cold. How strange, what did I say to make him unhappy? I slurped a pearl. Woo. Satisfied. I sometimes got anxious. Ethan, do you think I'll get fat if I drink too much bubble tea? He said lightly, no. You're already so skinny. Although his voice was very soft, I still heard it. Ethan, say things like that more often, I love hearing them. Okay. At this moment, the driver in the front row gave a gratified smile. 9. As soon as we arrived at the clubhouse, Ethan and I didn't enter directly, but were taken to the back door and arranged in Frank's lounge. Ethan, how have you been lately? The middle-aged man sitting on the sofa got up and went over to hold Ethan's hand. Ethan didn't respond to him and even disliked his touch. I know you resent me, but I'm very happy that you could come. Let me introduce you to your sister. Jane pushed Wendy forward, and she unwillingly called out, brother. Ethan turned his face away and continued to not speak. Wendy had been spoiled since she was a child and said irritably, I really don't know what he, an illegitimate son, has to be so arrogant about. Wendy. Jane immediately scolded. Frank, don't blame the children. They're still young, and it's also my fault for not talking to Ethan more before. It's my poor guidance. It doesn't matter if Ethan doesn't acknowledge me as his mother, as long as he can acknowledge you as his father, I'll treat him like my own child. What a two-faced green tea. Alright, take Ethan to his room to rest first. Wesley, you stay behind for a moment. As soon as Ethan heard this, he suddenly stopped and gave a warning look. According to what the system said before, Ethan would soon have a conflict with Wendy and meet the female lead, Scarlett. Only by meeting Scarlett could he completely get out of his autism and officially start his male lead life. Ethan, go and freshen up first. I'll come over later. After hesitating, Ethan chose to listen to me. He really listens to you. Aside from his mother, I've never seen him trust someone so much. Frank said sarcastically. Ethan's mother arranged your marriage, but Ethan doesn't like you, and you don't like Ethan either. I know you're with him now for the money, otherwise, who would be willing to be with an autistic patient? If you can. It was the same old plot of trying to get me to be a spy. How can such an old-fashioned plot still exist now? Mr. Ethan, if you want me to help you, there's no need to make your own son sound so worthless. The relationship between people is mutual. If he treats me well, I won't betray him. He should do whatever his heart desires. How he became like this, I believe you know very well in your heart. Neither he nor his mother is wrong. You know who's wrong, don't you? You're quite bold. Actually, I was sweating all over. But the words had already been spoken, and the attitude had been made clear. No matter what, I couldn't speak against my will. Frank waved his hand, go back. Ethan is still waiting for you. 10. I was led by a staff member to the door of Ethan's lounge. I happened to see Sophia scolding those who didn't have eyes. He's still a member of the Ethan family, how can you treat him like this? Ethan clenched his fists, his whole body shaking in pain. I subconsciously felt a little worried, but Scarlett stood in front of Ethan, handing him a tissue. Wipe it off. I'll have my dad kick all these people out later. Sophia was the heiress of the Jiang family and would be a great help to Ethan's success in the future. Ethan took the tissue and whispered something to her. They were very close. Sophia smiled after listening and quickly agreed. Okay. It seemed like I wasn't needed here. I sent a message to Ethan. Then I secretly went out the back door. I searched for nearby karaoke bars on Meituan and bought a 4-hour voucher and rushed over. 11. The long-lost voice of the system sounded. Host, I admire you. You can actually go to karaoke alone. How strong is your heart? I was very disdainful. What's wrong with going to karaoke alone? I can also go to a restaurant to eat alone, watch a movie alone, and go to the supermarket alone. I knew the plot wouldn't be changed. See? Didn't the male lead still go to the banquet and meet the female lead? The next second, I picked up the microphone and roared. The vast horizon is my love. Ouch, my ears. Host, why is your voice so loud? I held the microphone and continued to ask, what did you say? I can't hear you, why are you whispering like a mosquito? System. I ordered one song after another of Phoebe, Avril, Jackie, and Justin's songs. After recharging the song library to 40 songs, I sang and cried and laughed and continued to sing. I sang until my throat was dry and took out the beer that I had secretly brought in from my bag. With a pist, it was opened. I was singing a heartfelt song from Justin, crying like crazy, when the door of the private room suddenly opened. The sound stopped abruptly. Ethan and I stared at each other. Why did you come here? Ethan was a little aggrieved. You weren't there, I didn't want to stay there. He was still wearing that suit, it was obvious that he came directly here. The dim light hit him, outlining his broad shoulders and narrow waist. I swallowed. What's wrong with a man depending on his wife? My heart softened immediately, and I went over and handed him the microphone. Then come sing with me. I can't sing. Then listen to me sing. Okay. I couldn't say that my singing was heavenly, I could only say that it was like ghosts crying and wolves howling. As someone who was born tone deaf, I was still a little self-aware. I accidentally broke the pitch during the climax. I stopped and looked at Ethan. He looked like he was listening very seriously. I asked suspiciously, was it good? Ethan said seriously, it was good. I was quite touched. It seemed that he was also a tone-deaf person like me, maybe he sang even worse than me. I handed him the microphone and forced him, you have to sing. He hesitated to take the microphone, and then. It couldn't be said that it was ghosts crying and wolves howling, it could only be said that he was amazing. No. You didn't say you sang so well. My self-esteem was greatly hurt. When he returned the microphone to me, I refused. I'm not singing. Okay. In the last few seconds before the background music ended, Ethan said in a very small voice. Next time, can you not leave me alone? Although I drank alcohol. Although the background music was still very noisy. Although he spoke in a very small voice. But I still heard it. Okay. I thought. 12. The sofa in the KTV was not comfortable at all. I leaned back and rested on Ethan's shoulder. It was very hard. But it was quite reassuring. When it was time to leave, I was a little sleepy. I adjusted my position, rubbed my head against Ethan's chest, and said sticky. Ethan, I'm so tired, I want to go home. Ethan's Adam's apple rolled, and his voice was slightly hoarse, okay. I'm wearing high heels, I can't walk. I'll carry you back. Okay. I responded softly and prepared to get up from him. The door of the private room was suddenly kicked open. Police. 13. I sobered up instantly. Me, a good youth in China, a socialist with Chinese characteristics. I pay my taxes and don't sleep with people I shouldn't. How could they investigate me? The police obviously didn't believe it. Would a normal person come to karaoke dressed like this? Indeed, it looked like cosplay. I innocently pulled out a photo of our marriage certificate from my phone. Officer, although our relationship isn't that deep and we don't look like a couple, we are indeed legally married. The police looked at us for a long time and finally said helplessly. Go home and love each other, pay attention to the occasion. I heard that several illegal couples were found next door. As soon as the police left, I turned around and looked at Ethan. Pfft. I laughed. You know what, you look like a male model dressed like this. Ethan picked me up with a dark face. Don't drink so much next time. I don't. Before I could finish speaking, a kiss blocked my mouth. Ethan's lips were so soft. And there was a faint mint flavor. My whole face was flushed. He released my lips and said softly. Like this, do we look like a couple? 14. It was a long way from this place to home. Ethan carried me, holding my high heels in one hand. He walked slowly on the road like this. I don't know how long we walked. A little orange cat darted out from the side of the road. I asked Ethan to put me down. I used an unstandardized meow meow call to call the little orange cat out from under the car. I shouted once. It also shouted once. It was like it was correcting my pronunciation. Probably thinking that my call was too terrible, it slowly came out from under the car and meowed at me several times. Then, taking advantage of its inattention, I suddenly hugged it in my arms and said excitedly. We have a cat, Ethan. The little orange cat slapped my back of my hand with one paw. It was a soft paw pad, it didn't extend its claws. Its little expression was arrogant as if it was saying, silly, it's me who has someone. Hee hee, the cat language of stray cats is that those who are slow don't get any. When I leave, this cat can also be with you. Ethan suddenly froze. Why do you want to leave? Ethan, there will be better people to be with you in the future. We are all passers-by in other people's lives. Ethan lowered his eyes and didn't speak. 15. Since that day, it seemed that there was a problem with a big order in the Ethan family, and they were too busy to take care of themselves. I was still unemployed at home. It's just that Ethan seemed busier. Busy, everyone is busy, it's good to be busy. No matter how busy Ethan was, he would still remember to order me bubble tea when the time came. It's just that to worry about my health, it changed from 1 cup a day to 1 cup a week. I begged him for a long time, but he wouldn't let go. He would find out if I secretly ordered it. So difficult. A few more days passed. When Ethan wasn't home, Sophia came. You're Ethan's wife, right? I'm Sophia, Ethan's friend, I have something to tell you. My heart skipped a beat. The female lead was here to declare her sovereignty. It seemed that my divorce from Ethan was getting closer. Who knew that the next second, she took out 2 lipsticks from her bag. Ethan asked me to buy these limited edition lipsticks. He saw my lipstick shade that day and said it would suit you very well, so he asked me to help buy them. I thought it wouldn't be good to contact him directly, so I came to give them to you. I've heard some things about Ethan. I do think he's quite pitiful, but seeing you, I suddenly feel that God is still fair. He's lucky to have such a good wife like you. After Sophia left, I took a photo and sent it to Ethan. Lipstick received. Ethan replied almost instantly, okay. Ethan, I want to drink bubble tea. You drank it yesterday, you can't drink it anymore. I drank fruit tea yesterday, I want to drink bubble tea today, they don't conflict. Ethan ignored me. Then he turned around and forwarded me a list of the harms of drinking bubble tea every day. Me. Then I'll drink it tomorrow. 16. Another winter passed. We moved into a big villa. Ethan founded his own company. He caught up with the trend of AI and was doing software development in the field of artificial intelligence. Although the initial investment was relatively large, the returns were considerable. And I didn't want to go to work, so I stayed at home to paint, play with the cat, sleep, and watch dramas. But if I went to a karaoke bar, Ethan would check on me more than 10 times an hour. He was always anxious, always feeling that I was going to abandon him. Then when I went to karaoke before, you wouldn't have thought I was. Ethan still admitted, yeah. You said you liked good-looking people. No wonder he paid attention to his appearance almost every day after that. I was so surprised by his behavior, and I thought I was just horny myself. Ethan rarely came home early tonight. I curled up in the quilt and browsed my phone, while he read the news next to me. Ethan, my feet are so cold. Ethan habitually grabbed my feet and stuffed them into his clothes. So warm. I turned my head to look at the man. My hands are so cold. Ethan stuffed my hands into his clothes too. However, my hands were not as well behaved as my feet. They wandered around his body. And then, they stopped like a GPS at. Ethan groaned, put down his phone, and looked at me with some annoyance. I had a thick skin, it's warmest here. The air conditioner was set at 26 degrees. My face was a little hot. I'm still so cold, why don't we do some exercise? Ethan thought he had misheard, huh? We're husband and wife, shouldn't we do some husband and wife things? Then, I turned off the lights with a snap. In the darkness, the sounds of breathing intertwined. Don't call me Ethan anymore, call me husband. Husband. Not enough. In conclusion, Ethan was very obedient at other times. It's just on the bed. I never stopped him once when I asked him to stop. 17. The ending of the story didn't develop according to the predetermined trajectory. I was teasing the little orange cat when I saw the busy figure in the kitchen, and a different emotion suddenly arose in my heart. I walked over and hugged Ethan from behind. Have you ever thought that maybe we wouldn't have been together in the first place, you would have had a better partner, a brighter future, maybe even a future with a cheat code? Ethan stuffed a piece of freshly fried crispy pork into my mouth. Since I've chosen a path, I shouldn't think about whether the flowers on the other path are more brilliant. Because I know that what I have now is the best. Yes. The most ordinary, yet the happiest days. It's the present.